I've been sitting here thinking about everything that happened. And honestly, I still can't wrap my head around how it all just fell apart so completely. Marcus and I had been together for 20 years. 20 years since I first saw him walk into our high school photography club. This awkward new kid who didn't know a single person in town. I was the one who reached out to him, made him feel like he belonged, showed him how all the darkroom equipment worked, brought him into our circle. Even back then, deep down, I knew I was probably out of his league. I mean, guys were constantly asking me to prom, but there was just something about Marcus that felt safe, stable. Maybe that should have been my first warning sign. We somehow managed to stay together all through college, even though we ended up at completely different schools. We'd spend hours on the phone every single night, writing these incredibly long emails about our classes and our dreams and our future. I remember my roommates would always comment on how dedicated I was, how lucky Marcus was to have someone so unbelievably loyal. And I was loyal, completely and utterly faithful to him. While other girls were out there experimenting, having their fun, figuring out exactly what they wanted from life, I was already tied down, already planning out our entire future together. When we got married 10 years ago, I genuinely thought I was making the right choice. Marcus was successful, he was dependable, and he absolutely worshipped the ground I walked on. But lately, I'd been having all these thoughts about everything I'd given up, everything I'd missed out on. I mean, I gave him my entire 20s, my absolute prime years when I was at my physical peak. Do you have any idea how many women would kill to look the way I did at 25? And what did I do with all of that? I played house with literally the first guy who showed me any real attention. The whole thing started when I began really thinking about legacy, about what I wanted my life to actually mean something. I was 38, successful in my photography career, but something just felt incomplete, empty even. I even talked to Marcus about freezing my eggs, just to keep my options open for the future. And to his credit, he was supportive about it. I'll give him that much. He encouraged me to join this expensive gym downtown, said I deserved to invest in myself, to take care of my body. What he absolutely didn't expect was what I would find there, who I would meet. Sophia, Brooklyn, and Amber changed absolutely everything for me. Sophia was this stunning married woman in her early 30s who just seemed to have her entire life figured out perfectly. Successful husband, beautiful home, the whole package. But she still carved out time for herself, still knew exactly how to have fun and live life. Brooklyn and Amber were both in their early 20s, and God, being around them reminded me of everything I'd completely missed out on. They were so free, so unapologetic about enjoying their youth and their beauty and just being alive. When they invited me out for drinks after our workout classes, I felt this spark inside me that I hadn't experienced in years, maybe even a decade. The first few times were innocent enough, just dinner and maybe a couple of drinks, talking about life and relationships and dreams. But then it evolved into something more, into actual nightlife. Real bars with loud music and dancing, and men who looked at me like I was something truly special, like I mattered. I'd completely forgotten what that felt like. Having complete strangers notice me, compliment me, buy me drinks just because they found me attractive and desirable. Marcus looked at me like I was furniture at that point. Something familiar and expected and always just there. These men looked at me like I was a prize worth winning. I started going out with the girls every single week, sometimes even twice a week when we could manage it. We called ourselves the Fit and Fierce crew in our group chat. Chuckled softly. And honestly, we absolutely lived up to that name. I was keeping up with women 15 years younger than me, turning heads everywhere we went, feeling alive again. Sophia would always tell me I was the most beautiful one in our entire group. And coming from someone like her, that validation meant everything to me. Of course, Marcus started getting weird about the whole thing. He'd make these passive-aggressive comments about how much I was going out, how late I was staying out, how I seemed different somehow. Different. Like that was supposed to be a bad thing. I was finally coming alive again. Finally remembering who I actually was before I became just his wife, just Mrs. Marcus. And he saw that as a problem, as a threat. We had this absolutely massive argument one night where he basically tried to forbid me from going out with my friends. Forbid me. Like I was a child instead of a grown woman who had been supporting herself and contributing to our household for years. "You're going out too much, Emma," he said, standing there in our kitchen with his arms crossed like some disappointed parent judging me. "Every single week, sometimes even more. You come home smelling like alcohol and cigarettes. You sleep until noon the next day. This isn't normal behavior for a married woman." Normal behavior. Like there was some kind of handbook for how married women were supposed to act, what they were allowed to do. And apparently, having friends and an actual social life wasn't included in that handbook. "I'm having fun with my friends," I told him, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm sorry if that somehow threatens you, but I'm not going to apologize for finally having a life outside of these four walls." "It's not about having friends," he said, and his voice was getting that pathetic tone that made me want to scream. "It's about respect. Respect for our marriage, for our relationship, for what we built together. You're acting like you're single, Emma. Acting like I'm single." I paused, dropped my voice. Those words hit me wrong. Because honestly, sometimes when I was out there, I genuinely forgot I wasn't single anymore. When I was out with Sophia, Brooklyn, and Amber, when men were buying me drinks and telling me how absolutely stunning I looked, when I was dancing and laughing and feeling beautiful and desired and alive, in those perfect moments, I wasn't Marcus's wife. I was just Emma. And Emma was magnificent. Emma was everything. That particular night, I promised him I'd stay home. But as soon as he went to bed, I found myself getting angrier and angrier, more furious by the minute. Who was he to tell me what I could and couldn't do with my own life? Who was he to make me cancel plans with my friends just because he was feeling insecure about himself? I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw a woman who was still incredibly beautiful, still vibrant and alive, still young enough to enjoy life to its fullest. And I was supposed to waste all of that sitting on the couch watching mindless television with someone who took me completely for granted. I put on my black dress, the one that hugged every single curve absolutely perfectly, and called an Uber without a second thought. If Marcus wanted to control someone, he should have married a completely different type of woman. I texted the girls that I was coming out after all, and Sophia responded immediately with pure excitement. "Yes, girl, we're at Murphy's, and there are so many cute guys here right now." The bar was absolutely packed when I arrived, music pounding, energy electric and alive. I felt like I was stepping into a completely different world, one where I actually belonged, where I fit in. Brooklyn and Amber immediately started gushing over my dress, and Sophia introduced me to some of her other friends who were out that night celebrating something. Within minutes, I had a drink in my hand and 3 different men actively trying to get my attention, competing for me. That's when I met Ryan. Tall, broad shoulders, this confident smile that made my stomach flip in ways it genuinely hadn't in years. He approached me while I was at the bar ordering another drink, leaned in close so I could hear him over the music, so close I could smell his cologne. I hope you don't mind me saying this, he said, and the way he looked at me made me feel like the only woman in the entire room. But you're absolutely stunning. Can I buy you that drink? We talked for over an hour, maybe longer. He was charming, funny, successful, some kind of consultant who traveled constantly for work. He actually listened when I talked, asked genuine questions about my photography career, complimented my intelligence right along with my appearance. When was the last time Marcus had done any of that? When was the last time Marcus had made me feel interesting, desirable, worth pursuing and fighting for? When Ryan suggested we go somewhere quieter, somewhere we could actually hear each other talk, I didn't even hesitate for a second. I texted the girls that I was leaving early, and Sophia responded with a winking emoji and "Get it, gorgeous." I felt so alive, so free, so much like the woman I was always supposed to be, the woman I deserved to be. His apartment was nice, sophisticated, nothing at all like the suburban mediocrity I'd been living in for years. We had more drinks, talked more about life and dreams, and when he finally kissed me, it felt like waking up from a long, suffocating sleep. Everything about it was electric, passionate, real, and raw. This was what I'd been missing my entire life, what I'd given up when I tied myself down to Marcus at such a ridiculously young age. This was the life I deserved to be living all along. I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little bit. Not even for a moment. If anything, I felt vindicated, like I was finally taking something for myself after years and years of putting everyone else's needs first, always sacrificing. When I got home around 3 in the morning, Marcus was asleep, and I was so grateful for that small mercy. I took a long, hot shower, washing away any evidence of what had happened, and slipped quietly into bed next to him, feeling more satisfied and alive than I had in months, maybe years. The next morning, I couldn't wait to tell the girls about my entire night, every detail. Our group chat was absolutely buzzing with questions, and I gave them every single detail I could remember. Well, almost every detail. I couldn't actually remember the guy's name, which was pretty embarrassing when I thought about it, but the girls thought it was absolutely hilarious. Honestly, I felt bad at first. I typed quickly, but as soon as I walked in and saw him waiting there, I didn't care anymore. Marcus is trying to control the wrong person, and honestly, I'm way too beautiful to be faithful to just one person. Sophia responded immediately with enthusiasm. "Yes, queen, you deserve to live your life exactly how you want to." Brooklyn added, "About damn time, you've been tied down your entire life. You've never been free." And Amber wrote, "I seriously can't believe you never had a proper phase. Most women get that completely out of their system in their 20s. They were absolutely right. I had been tied down my entire life, completely committed to one person since I was basically still a teenager. I never got to explore my options, never got to use my beauty the way most women naturally do during their prime years. I'd wasted my absolute peak years on someone who didn't even truly appreciate what he had, who took me for granted. I kept thinking about how I never really got to use my beauty the way most women do. Like, I'm still gorgeous now, but I completely wasted my absolute peak years being a good little wife, doing everything right. The validation from my friends felt absolutely incredible. Finally, people who genuinely understood what I was going through, who supported my growth and my journey of self-discovery. Marcus had been acting really strange that morning, quiet and distant in this weird way, but I just assumed he was still pouting about me going out despite our argument the night before. His problem, not mine to deal with. I decided right then to go out again the very next night. Why not, right? I'd opened a door to a brand new version of myself, and I absolutely wasn't about to close it just because my husband was having some kind of pathetic insecurity crisis. The girls were excited to hear more about my adventures and all the details, and we made plans to hit a different bar, somewhere with an even better crowd and better energy. Marcus was being so weird when I got ready to leave that second night, hovering around me like he desperately wanted to say something but didn't quite have the courage. I looked incredible that night, even better than before. I'd spent extra time on my makeup and chosen a dress that showed off all my best features perfectly. When I caught him staring at me in the mirror, he looked away so quickly, probably wondering how he'd gotten so lucky and how much longer he could possibly keep me. The second night out was even better than the first, even more thrilling. I felt confident, radiant, like I was finally living the exact life I was meant to live all along. Men approached me constantly throughout the night, buying me drinks, complimenting everything from my smile to my intelligence to my eyes. I danced until my feet were killing me and laughed until my cheeks actually hurt. This was what I'd been missing for 20 years, what I absolutely deserved to experience and enjoy. When I came home around 2 in the morning, Marcus was waiting for me in the living room. All the lights were on and he was just sitting there on the couch with this strange, unreadable expression on his face. I could smell the alcohol on my own breath, and I knew I probably reeked of cologne from the various men I'd been dancing with all night. But so what? Defensively, I was an adult who'd had a fun night out with friends. "What's up?" I asked casually, kicking off my heels and trying to read his mood, gauge the situation. He just stared at me for this long, uncomfortable moment, then slowly held up my phone in his hand. My stomach absolutely dropped, but I tried desperately to keep my expression completely neutral. "Do you really think you're too beautiful to be faithful, Emma?" The way he said it, repeating my exact words back to me, made them sound so much harsher than I'd intended. But I wasn't going to apologize for being honest about my feelings in my life. "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, but my voice sounded weak and unconvincing even to my own ears. "Did you really waste your prime years on me?" he continued, his voice getting louder now, more emotional. "Do you really wish you'd had your phase so badly that you'd throw away everything we built?" He'd read everything, every single message in our group chat, every honest thought I'd shared with my friends in confidence. I felt completely exposed, violated, but also strangely defiant. Those were my private conversations, my safe space to process what I was going through. "You went through my phone?" I asked, trying desperately to turn this entire thing back on him, make him the bad guy. "That's a serious violation of my privacy, Marcus." But he wasn't backing down this time. Not like usual. "Where were you 2 nights ago, Emma? Who did you go home with? What exactly happened?" I just stared at him, not sure what to say, how to respond. Part of me wanted to lie, to deny everything and act offended, but another part of me was exhausted from pretending, so tired of acting like I was happy in a marriage that had become a suffocating prison. "Nothing happened," I finally said weakly, but even I knew how completely unconvincing it sounded coming out of my mouth. "Nothing happened?" he repeated, his voice getting shaky now, breaking.
"You texted your friends about how you couldn't even remember his name, Emma. You bragged about cheating on me, about betraying everything we had." When he put it like that, it sounded so terrible, so much worse. But that wasn't how it felt when it was actually happening in the moment. It felt like pure freedom, like finally taking control of my own life and my own choices. I started to cry. Not because I actually felt guilty about what I'd done, but because everything was falling apart so quickly, spiraling out of control. This wasn't how I wanted him to find out at all. I wanted to be the one in control of the situation, the one who decided when and how to address all our problems. "I need you to pack your things and leave," he said, and his voice was ice cold now, completely distant and foreign. "Tonight, right now. I'm calling you an Uber and you're going to your mother's house." "Are you completely insane?" I asked, the tears stopping immediately as anger took over. "You're going to throw away 20 years together over one mistake? One single night?" But he was already moving with purpose, pulling suitcases out of the closet, throwing my clothes and belongings into them with absolutely no care for organization or how things were folded. "Get dressed," he commanded. "Put on something appropriate for going to your mother's house at 3 in the morning." I couldn't believe this was actually happening, that this was real. Normal couples work through infidelity. They went to therapy. Normal husbands didn't just throw their wives out onto the street over what was essentially a meaningless encounter with a stranger. I tried to reason with him, to explain that it didn't mean anything at all, that I was just going through something difficult and needed his support and understanding, not his harsh judgment. But he wouldn't listen to a word I said. He packed my things with mechanical efficiency, like I was just another task to complete. Called the Uber and waited by the door like some kind of bouncer throwing out trash. When the car finally arrived, he carried my suitcases out himself, not even letting me say a proper goodbye to our home, to our life together. The ride to my mother's house was absolutely surreal. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, probably wondering what kind of dramatic domestic situation he'd gotten himself mixed up in. I wanted to explain that my husband was having some kind of mental breakdown, that this wasn't normal behavior for rational adults, but I couldn't find the right words. My mother was completely shocked when I showed up at her door in the middle of the night, crying and carrying suitcases like some kind of refugee. I told her Marcus and I had had a really bad fight, that he completely overreacted to something minor and kicked me out unfairly. She made up the guest room without too many questions and promised we'd talk more in the morning when I was calmer. But I could see all the questions and concern in her eyes. A week later, a process server showed up at my mother's house with divorce papers. Official, legal documents. Marcus was actually serious about this, genuinely planning to end our entire marriage over one night of indiscretion. One mistake. I hired the best lawyer I could possibly find and prepared to fight him with everything I had. I deserved half of everything we built together, regardless of what had happened between us. I'd contributed to our household for years, supported his career ambitions, been a good wife for an entire decade. One mistake didn't just erase all of that history, all that time and effort. But apparently, Marcus had been planning this strategically for a while. He'd hidden assets, consulted with lawyers secretly, built an entire case that painted me as some kind of serial cheater who'd been deceiving him for months, not just one night. My lawyer said it would be extremely difficult to prove otherwise, especially with all the group chat messages as damning evidence of my mindset and intentions. I tried absolutely everything I could think of to reach him, to make him see reason and logic. I sent long, heartfelt text messages explaining my perspective and my pain. I drove by our house multiple times hoping to catch him, to talk face to face. One night I even parked across the street at 3 a.m. But he must have spotted me because the police showed up 20 minutes later and told me to leave or face harassment charges. The divorce proceedings were an absolute nightmare, worse than I could have imagined. Marcus's lawyer was absolutely ruthless, presenting evidence of my harassment and what they called unstable behavior. They made me sound like some kind of crazy stalker instead of a woman who was desperately fighting for her marriage, for her life. The judge was harsh and unsympathetic, ruling in Marcus's favor on almost every single point. I lost the house we'd bought together, most of our savings that we built up, even had to sell my car to pay legal fees. Years and years of building a life together, and I was left with almost nothing to show for it. After the divorce was finally finalized, I found myself at a bar downtown one night, drinking alone and thinking about how completely my entire life had fallen apart, how everything had crumbled. I lost my husband, my home, my financial security all over one night that was supposed to be about finding myself and being happy. In a moment of weakness, I called Marcus's number, not really expecting him to answer at all. He picked up on the third ring, and for just a second, I thought maybe there was still some hope. "What do you want, Emma?" His voice was so tired, so distant and cold. "I just wanted to tell you that my life is complete trash now," I said, the alcohol making me more honest than I intended to. "Everything is completely ruined and it's all your fault. You made your choices." He replied simply, "I have nothing else to say to you. Goodbye." The line went dead, and when I tried calling back immediately, it went straight to voicemail. I tried calling from different numbers, even had my mother try calling him on my behalf, but he blocked us completely and thoroughly. 20 years of history together, and he'd erased me from his entire life like I had never even existed at all. Sitting here now looking at how everything unraveled so quickly, I still can't fully understand how it all went wrong so fast, how it fell apart. Maybe I made some mistakes along the way. Maybe I could have handled certain things differently, made better choices. But did I really deserve to lose absolutely everything I built together? Did one night of poor judgment really warrant the complete destruction of my entire life? People keep telling me I should feel guilty, that I should take full responsibility for what happened. But it's hard to feel sorry for finally standing up for myself, for finally taking something I wanted instead of always putting everyone else first like I always did. Yes, the consequences were more severe than I ever expected, but that doesn't necessarily mean I was wrong to want more from my life, to want to feel alive. I gave Marcus my best years, my youth, my complete loyalty and devotion for 2 decades. When I finally did something for myself, something that made me feel alive and beautiful and free and desired, he couldn't handle it, couldn't deal with it. Maybe that says more about him and his insecurities than it does about me and my choices. Maybe I'm better off without someone who'd rather destroy everything than work through our problems together like adults. But late at night, when I'm alone in my tiny apartment, struggling to pay bills and wondering how I'm going to rebuild my entire life at 38 years old, I sometimes wonder if it was actually worth it. That one night of feeling desired and free and beautiful, was it worth everything I lost? In the end, was proving myself that I was still beautiful and desirable worth losing all the security and stability I built over 20 years? I don't have a clear answer to that question yet. All I know for certain is that I can't change what happened. I can't go back in time. And I can't make Marcus see that what I did came from a place of deep pain and confusion, not malice or hatred. I was drowning in a life that felt too small for who I was meant to be, suffocating. And when I finally tried to swim to the surface to breathe, everything just collapsed around me. Maybe someday he'll understand that people make mistakes when they're desperate, when they feel trapped and unappreciated and invisible. Maybe someday he'll realize that throwing away 20 years over one night was an extreme reaction that hurt both of us more than was necessary. But probably not. Marcus was always stubborn about everything, always saw things in black and white, with no room for gray areas or human complexity or forgiveness. So here I am, starting completely over at an age when I thought my life would be settled and secure and stable. It's terrifying and overwhelming every single day. But maybe it's also an opportunity for something new. Maybe this is my chance to build the life I actually want, instead of the one I just fell into when I was too young to know any better, too naive. Maybe losing everything was the price I had to pay for